Hello friends, I am Indrani Das Sharma, Associate Professor in Jhulelal Institute of Technology. My today's topic is radiological and nuclear emergencies, related risks, steps for prevention and protection. Radiological and nuclear emergencies, though they appear to be similar, there is apparent similarities between radiological and nuclear emergencies as both are related with contamination of environment and individual with radioactive material. However, there is a major difference in the mode of contamination. Radiological incidents produce radiation without detonation of a nuclear device, whereas nuclear incidents involve detonation of a nuclear device. In radiological incidents, victims have contamination and or exposure, for instances by using radiological dispersal device, which could be use of explosive or non-explosive, or maybe by hidden radioactive source, that is radiological exposure device. But in nuclear incidents, which is related to blast, detonation and explosion, involves nuclear explosion, that is fission or fusion or maybe combination of both. Victims here also have contamination and or exposure, for instance due to nuclear weapon detonation or due to improvised nuclear device detonation. An improvised nuclear device is an illicit nuclear weapon bought or stolen or originating from a nuclear state, or a weapon fabricated by a terrorist group from illegally obtained fissile material. Though the effect is same, but the difference lies in the origin of the weapon. Some atoms have unstable nuclei. They attain stability by emitting high energy radiation. These radiations are called as ionizing radiation, as they are capable of removing electrons from a target atom or molecule, forming a charged pair, that is ion pair. These radiations they destroy the material on which incident, whether living or non-living. The nuclei which emit ionizing radiations are known as radioisotopes or radionuclides. The process wherein radionuclides emit ionizing radiation is also termed as radioactive decay. Each radioactive isotope has its own characteristic decay scheme. This decay scheme is uninfluenced by external factors like pressure, temperature, etc. The time required for half of the atoms of a given sample of radioisotope to decay is the half-life. It is denoted as T half. The half-life ranges from a fraction of a millionth of second to billions of years depending on the radioisotopes. The important definitions are given on the screen. Electromagnetic spectrum as shown on the screen is distribution of electromagnetic radiations according to their frequency or wavelength. The entire spectrum includes radio waves, infrared radiation, visible light, ultraviolet radiation, X-rays and gamma rays. The X-rays and gamma rays are the ionizing radiations. The ionizing radiation they interact with matter either by scattering or absorption. Absorption is more important because it causes physiological injury in the body tissue. It is a phenomena on which detection of ionizing radiation is based, and also the degree of absorption or the type of interaction is a primary factor in considering the shielding requirements. Transfer of energy from an incident photon or particle to the atom on absorption occur either by excitation or ionization. Excitation is a process involving addition of energy to electron in atom or molecular system, whereby the energy is transferred to the electron from its ground state to stable state. Excitation is a process involving addition of energy to electron in atomic or molecular system, thereby transferring it from its stable to unstable, that is excited state. The electrons emit the excess energy in form of X-ray or by transferring its energy to the electron of the other atoms or molecules. Secondly, ionization is a process resulting in removal of an electron from an atom or molecule, thereby leaving the atom or molecule with a net positive charge. Each ionization event produces ion pair consisting of a free electron and a positively charged remainder of the atom. The ionizing radiations are of three basic types. First, positively charged alpha particles. Secondly, negatively charged beta particles and uncharged gamma rays. The alpha particles are the heaviest, they have positive charge and they have a very short penetration power. So, alpha particles can be stopped by simple protective clothing like full sleeve shirt and gloves. Most of the alpha particles or alpha radiations are stopped by the skin itself. Beta particles have higher penetrating power than alpha particles. They are negatively charged and they can be stopped by aluminum foil of few centimeters thickness. However, gamma radiations, they do not have any charge and have the highest penetrating power, but they have the lowest ionizing power as well. They can be stopped by shielding with lead sheets with thickness of few centimeters as shown on the screen. The penetrating power of these ionizing radiations makes them more damaging. To understand the damage caused, it is important that we understand the amount of energy contained in the radiation. In short, we should quantify the energy present in the radiation. So, it is imperative to understand few more terminologies like exposure and dose absorbed. The difference between exposure and the dose absorbed is that the former refers to the energy incident, while the latter refers to the energy absorbed. Dose is the energy imparted to the matter by the ionizing radiation or particle per unit mass of the irradiated material at the point of interest. The unit of absorbed dose is taken as rad. Rad is the acronym for radiation absorbed dose. 1 rad is equals to 100 ergs per gram of any irradiated material. The biological damage is different in different organisms by the same quantity of dose. It varies from individual to individual of the same species. It also depends on the previous health conditions of the victims. It also depends on the type of radiation for the same quantity of dose. The biological damage also depends on the tissue type in the same individual. The International System of Units, that is SI units, is accepted by International Commission of Radiation Units. Nowadays, special units of radiation are used as per SI unit. The unit of dose is joule per kg, or it is also known as Gray. 1 Gray is equal to 1 joule per kg, which is equal to 100 rads. Similarly, the unit of dose equivalent is sievert. It represents the equivalent biological effect by the deposition of 1 joule of radiation energy per kilogram of human tissue. So, 1 sievert is also equals to 1 joule per kg. Nuclear reactions can be classified into two broad types. First is the fission, wherein the heavier nucleus divides or splits into 2 or more lighter nuclei with release of enormous amount of energy. Fusion, on the other hand, is the opposite of fission, that is, it is combining of 2 light nuclei to form a heavier nucleus. The nuclear energy can be used for constructive work, as in case of power generation by nuclear power plants, or in medical applications as in radiomedicines for diagnosis and treatment of various ailments, and it can also be used for destructive works as in case of nuclear bomb, nuclear warheads, etc. Now, let us understand the destruction and damage caused due to nuclear explosion. In a nuclear explosion, energy is transferred to the surrounding medium in 3 distinct forms, that is blast wave, thermal radiation and nuclear radiation. The distribution of energy among these 3 forms depends on the yield of the weapon, location of the burst and the characteristics of the environment. Now, for example, in case of a low altitude atmospheric detonation of a weapon in kiloton range, the energy is generally distributed as 50% as blast energy, 35% as thermal radiation, which comprises of wide range of electromagnetic spectrum starting from infrared radiation to soft X-rays, 15% as nuclear radiation, that includes initial ionizing radiation consisting mainly of neutrons and gamma rays emitted within the first minute after detonation, and remaining as residual nuclear radiation. Nuclear explosion is generally characterized by high temperature of millions of degrees centigrade, that is fireball formation in the immediate area, which we call as ground zero of the detonation, and formation of mushroom shaped cloud. As seen in the figure, we find that major damage occurs at the instant of explosion. Within 1 hour, almost 50% of the fallout decays. Within 1 day, most of the fallout has been decayed. Fallout here, it means the dust which is gathered with the explosion, they become radioactive due to immense electromagnetic waves and nuclear radiation. So, these radioactive particles, when they fall, they create radiation hazard. Within a week, most of the radioactive material has been decayed, but the area, it still remains contaminated even after years or decades of event. The acute radiation syndrome, it starts after a week of the explosion. The onset of acute radiation syndrome may start after an hour of the event, but it may continue further. Later on, there are certain risks related to cancer and other physiological trauma. The nuclear burst can be classified into 4 main types as shown in the figure. The first one being high altitude burst, where the burst occurs in air at height more than 30 kilometers. The significant ionization of the upper atmosphere, that is ionosphere, takes place. There is severe disruption of communication. They also generate intense electromagnetic pulse which affects electronic equipment. Secondly, air burst. Air burst occurs in air, but at altitude below 30 kilometers. The fireball does not touch the ground. There is less amount of radioactive fallout, but however, it also produces electromagnetic pulse which can disturb communication. Moreover, it causes flash burns and eye injuries over a large area. A surface burst is an explosion in which weapon is detonated slightly above the surface of the earth, so that the fireball actually touches the land or water surface. Under these conditions, the area is affected by blast, thermal radiation and initial nuclear radiation. The local fallout is expected to be large, and it creates a hazard over a downwind area. The fourth one, that is the subsurface burst, is an explosion where the point of detonation is below the surface of land or water. Cratering occurs, but the fallout is minimum if penetration does not occur. Now, let us see why we have increased risk of nuclear and radiological threats. The growth in the application of nuclear science and technology in the field of power generation, medicine, industry, agriculture, research and defense has led to an increased risk of nuclear and radiological emergencies. Any radiation incident resulting in or having potential to result in exposure or contamination of the workers or the public in excess to the respective permissible limit can lead to a nuclear or radiological emergency. The use of nuclear weapons dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the wide publicity given to the reactor accidents at 3 Mile Island, USA, Chernobyl, USSR and Fukushima, Japan have strongly influenced the public perception of any nuclear disaster. For improving the quality of life in society, India also has embarked upon a large number of nuclear energy programs. For power generation, India has 17 power reactors and 5 research reactors in operation, along with 6 power reactors under construction. It is also one of the forerunners of thorium based reactor technology. Further, the country utilizes radioisotopes in variety of applications in non-power sector, like in the field of industry, agriculture, medicine, research, sewage treatment, etc. Due to inherent safety culture and the best safety practices and standards followed in these applications and effective regulation by Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, that is AERB, and Department of Atomic Energy, that is DAE, the radiation dose to which persons working in the nuclear or radiation facilities are exposed to is well within the permissible limits, and the risk of its impact on the public domain is very low. The threats can be classified into 4 major categories. First, radiological disaster, nuclear explosion, third, nuclear reactor core meltdown, and fourth, accidental release of radioactivity. The main objective of radiological threat or weapon is to spread the fear and long-term contamination of buildings or areas. Radioisotopes mixed with dirty bombs or contaminating food and water source is the most common method of attack. It is more of a psychological attack by creating fear amongst the masses. In nuclear explosion, this type of threat is very rare. In case of nuclear explosion, the casualty is mainly due to shock wave, thermal wave, radiation damage and radio poisoning, and nuclear fallout. In case of nuclear reactor core meltdown, this type of event is also quite rare, and it is likely to happen only if all the safety measures of the nuclear power plant fail due to human error, sabotage or any natural calamity. The radioactivity released can be controlled if proper on-site emergency procedures are diligently handled. Both nuclear explosion and reactor core meltdown is the rarest of the rare event. However, nuclear emergencies can still arise due to factors beyond the control of the operating agencies, mainly due to human error or insider threat or system failure or sabotage, or due to natural calamities like earthquake, cyclone, flood, etc. Such failures, even though of very low probability, may lead to an on-site or off-site emergency. For instance, an orphaned source of cobalt-60 discarded by the Delhi University surfaced at Mayapuri, killing 1 person and injuring 3 others, or like the Goiânia accident in Brazil, where a radioactive contamination accident occurred on 13 September 1987. At Goiânia, a forgotten radiotherapy source was taken from an abandoned hospital, and it was subsequently handled by many people, resulting in 4 deaths, and more than 200 people were found to be contaminated. To combat such situation, proper emergency preparedness plan must be in place so that there is minimum loss of life, livelihood, property and impact on the environment. Now, let us consider some nuclear and radiological hazards. Nuclear and radiological agents present hazard in 2 major ways. Firstly, by emission of highly penetrating radiation leading to external irradiation of the individuals. Secondly, due to irradiation of tissues and organs in the body if the agents are inhaled or ingested or absorbed through the skin by consumption of contaminated food or water. High doses of radiation from any source can cause acute life-threatening injuries after an exposure period lasting anywhere from few minutes to several hours, depending on the dose of radiation and the type of radiation. Adverse health effect from such exposure is known as deterministic effects. The effect of low dose of radiation are much harder to gauge accurately. Significant exposure to low doses of radiation can lead to increased risk of cancer at later stage, with potential latency period of many years. These increased risks are referred to as stochastic effect. A very low level radiation injury does not usually require immediate medical attention. Now, let us see some of the dose limits which has been put forward by AERB. The normal exposure of individuals resulting from all relevant practices should be subject to dose limits to ensure that no individual is exposed to a risk that is judged to be unacceptable. The table on the screen shows the dose limitations for various parts of the body by the occupational exposure or due to the public exposure. Occupational exposure is the radiation exposure to the worker involved in practice in which he or she is exposed due to handling of radioactive source or radiation generating equipment. Public exposure is the radiation exposure to public due to the above practices. Some signs of radiation sickness are: firstly, onset of nausea and vomiting within few hours of exposure. These symptoms show latency period which decreases with increasing dose. Chances of fatalities increase with increasing dose. The table shown on the screen depicts the dose and its corresponding effect. Apart from nausea and vomiting, the other signs include anorexia, that is loss of appetite, diarrhea with presence of blood in stools, fatigue or weakness, radiation burns which is similar to severe sunburn, hair loss, hypotension, dizziness, disorientation, bleeding, fever, infection, ulceration, fluid loss, headache, fainting and finally death. The probability of a major accident at nuclear facilities leading to the release of large quantities of radioactivity into the environment is always ensured to be negligibly small. However, even in the event of major release into the environment, the prompt and effective implementation of countermeasures can reduce the radiological consequences for the public. Now, let us look into some of the safety measures at nuclear facilities and power plants. All living things are exposed to ionizing radiation from natural, called as background radiation, and man-made radiation sources. Ionizing radiations are known to cause biological changes in the exposed person, and hence the dose to the occupational worker should be kept as low as reasonably achievable, acronymed as ALARA, and doses to patient should be optimized. Suitable control measures are to minimize the radiation exposure so that maximum benefits are derived with minimum radiological risk. The three factors for radiation protection for working personnel and public are: first, time, that is, exposure of radiation source is directly proportional to time. Second, it is the distance. Increase the distance from the source to decrease the exposure rate. Exposure varies as per inverse square law. In short, more the distance from the source, lesser would be the radiation. Third, shielding. Use an appropriate shielding material or protection device. Shielding reduces exposure rate. The nuclear power plants are generally provided with an isolation zone of 1.5 km radius and an additional buffer zone of 5 km radius, where all types of civilian activities as well as trespassing are restricted. Moreover, the nuclear facilities have high boundary walls. Additionally, the nuclear power plants and facilities have no fly zone. Most of the processes within the plants are remotely handled. The industry personnel are provided with film badge dosimeter to monitor the radiation dose exposure as shown on the screen. They are also provided with protective suits, lead shielding and glasses to prevent or reduce the radiation exposure. Radiation survey meters are used to monitor periodic radiation leakage within the nuclear facility. The nuclear power plants and facilities have arrangements required to promptly classify an emergency, mitigate the emergency, notify and recommend protective actions of the site consistent with international guidelines, protect those on site, obtain off-site assistance, conduct environmental monitoring of the affected area and assist off-site official in keeping the public informed. It is mandatory for all nuclear facilities to have comprehensive emergency preparedness plan that can considerably reduce the hazards of an emergency situation. In India, AERB ensures that the facility has emergency response manual and is capable of handling at least 3 main types of emergencies such as plant, on-site and off-site before issuing operational license to the nuclear facility. The operators of nuclear facility must make an assessment of the type and quantum of release of radioactivity under various accident conditions and the extent to which it can spread into the environment. The handling of nuclear emergencies requires coordination amongst different service groups of the nuclear facility. In event of potential radiological consequences in the public domain, all the authorities at the 3 levels, that is the district, state and central, will play a vital role. The nuclear power plant handles emergency in a very efficient way. When the radiological consequences of an abnormal situation are expected to remain confined to the plant boundary or a section of the plant, it is described as plant emergency. Nuclear facilities already have the following provisions for detection, classification, notification and mitigation of any emergency situation. Emergency operating procedures for assessment of an emergency condition and its mitigation, pre-identification of any facility specific abnormal situation for classification as a plant and site emergency, facility specific approved nuclear emergency response plans specifying the jobs of all the functionaries who have assigned role during the emergency, alerting the plant personnel by sounding emergency siren or making an emergency announcement, adequate means of communicating a notification to the emergency response organization at the facility, identified assembly location for plant personnel and casual visitors, formation of rescue teams and activation of a treatment area and decontamination center, radiation survey around the plant and outside the plant and site boundaries, assessment of wind speed and direction and affected sector around the nuclear facility. Whenever required, the nuclear facility is able to mobilize the services of ambulance and paramedical staff. Equipment and materials for handling nuclear emergency are kept at designated place for nuclear facility, example using stable iodine tablets, radiological monitoring of the environment in 16 km radius around the plant. In case of off-site emergencies, all the above points are valid, including 2 more points where the pre-identification of plant conditions which can lead to an emergency in public domain. Secondly, an assessment of the radiological status at the site boundary and in public domain. For handling any off-site emergency condition in nuclear power plant, there is an off-site emergency committee headed by the district magistrate of the concerned district. It is supported by district subcommittee which includes chief of all public service departments relevant to the emergency management in the district and also head of the site emergency committee of the nuclear facility for technical advice. This committee takes decision pertaining to the handling of nuclear emergency outside the site boundary and ensures implementation of countermeasures such as sheltering, prophylaxis, evacuation and resettlement, including maintenance of law and order and civil amenities. The major actions to be taken after disaster are: firstly, evacuation of the victims from the contaminated site and subsequent entry of the general public should be restricted. Approximate radiation dose absorbed assessment by the victim can be done by examination of any household items available with the victim like plastic, glass, etc. In case of nuclear explosion, survivors are to be treated for burn injury, radiation sickness and radiation poisoning along with psychological counseling. Avoid the nuclear fallout. Nuclear explosion is generally followed by fallout. Majority of the radioisotopes fall at ground zero and its surrounding area within first 24 hours. In case of radiation exposure, the victim should be provided with required medical assistance. Most importantly, the emergency workers should be protected against the contamination from the victim and the site. They should be trained in handling nuclear and radiological emergency situations. Major do's and don'ts for general public if at all disaster strikes. The major do's are: go indoors and stay inside, switch on radio or television and look out for public announcements from the local authority. Close doors and windows, cover all food, water and consume only such covered items. If in open, cover face and body with wet handkerchief, scarf, towel, dhoti or sari. Return home, change the clothes, have a complete wash and use fresh clothing. Cooperate with the local authorities and obey their instructions completely regarding medication, evacuation, etc. Create awareness about nuclear and radiation hazard amongst family and friends to reduce their fear of radiation. Some things which should be avoided are that one should not panic or fear. Do not believe in rumors spread by word of mouth or on social media. Do not stay or go outside. As far as possible, avoid water from open well, ponds, exposed crops and vegetables, contaminated food, water or milk. Do not disobey any instruction of the district or civil defense authorities in this regard. Now, let us see a typical case study of Fukushima disaster. Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant operated by Tokyo Electric Power was located on a 3.5 square kilometer in towns of Okuma and Futaba in Fukushima Prefecture, Japan. The plant was badly damaged by the earthquake of magnitude 9 following a tsunami that hit Japan on 11th March 2011. 6 reactors of the plant were badly damaged, with blast occurring at 4 reactors as the cooling system failed. The chain of events that followed caused major radiation leakage in the surrounding area. The plants were impossible to restart. This triggered release of radioactivity, resulted in 20 km evacuation zone surrounding the plant. The Japanese authority instructed those within the radius of 20 to 30 kilometers to shelter, but were later on advised to voluntarily evacuate. Now, let us analyze what was the reason for such a disaster. This analysis is not for apportioning the blame of the disaster, but to recognize the cause of accident of such a magnum. The government commissioned study reported that the plant operators and the regulators had failed to anticipate the impact of huge tsunami of this magnitude. It showed lack of precautionary measures, as neither the company operating the plant, that is Tokyo Electric Power, nor the regulatory authorities took precaution in anticipating that a severe accident could be caused by tsunami of such a magnitude. They also failed to incorporate measures against the tsunamis exceeding their basic design. This indicated limit of voluntary safety measures. The government's nuclear regulatory board did not mandate the company to take specific measures like additional construction after they received simulation results from TEPCO in 2008 and early in 2011 regarding the impact of tsunami on the facility. The company too admitted that they were not prepared enough for an earthquake of such a large magnitude. The report also distinctively reflected unpreparedness, and the situation worsened due to delay in relaying the information to the public, managers' lack of knowledge of procedures dealing with emergencies, and poor communication at almost all levels, that is between the worker and the government, among the worker themselves, as well as between the government bodies. Many different type of emergency workers were needed to support the on-site and off-site emergency response. On-site emergency workers included nuclear power plant personnel either directly employed by Tokyo Electric Power or subcontracted, as well as personnel from Japan Self-Defense Force, the firefighting service and the police engaged in the emergency work on the site. Off-site emergency workers included personnel from different organizations and services like government and non-governmental. Their task included evacuation of the public and of special facilities offering support to the evacuees, providing medical care and carrying out monitoring and sampling. Many of these designated emergency workers had not been trained to work in conditions of nuclear emergency. For example, they had not been trained in radiation protection aspects, they had not been informed about the potential health risk from the radiation exposure, or trained in use of respiratory protection or in dealing with patients potentially contaminated with radioactive material. This resulted in some delay in implementation of mitigatory actions. Consequences of the disaster were more than 15,000 people were killed, over 6,000 were injured and many went missing due to the earthquake, tsunami and the nuclear disasters. More than 1 lakh people had to be evacuated as the radiation leaked into the atmosphere, sea and the food chain. The accident resulted in release of radionuclides to the environment. Most of the atmospheric releases were blown eastward by the prevailing winds, depositing onto and dispersing within the North Pacific Ocean. The transport of the atmospheric radioactive releases was directed mainly to the east and north of Japan, following the prevailing wind direction and then around the globe. Uncertainties in the estimation of the amount and composition of radioactive substances were difficult to resolve for reasons that included lack of monitored data on the deposition of the atmospheric releases on the ocean. Following the accident, the Japanese authorities applied conservative reference levels of dose and included in the ICRP recommendations. Thus, the mishap at Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant clearly mandates that the safety and preventive measures should be the topmost priority. Preparedness for dealing with such an emergency should be dealt with very seriously. There are some lessons which was hard learnt from this incident. In preparing for the response to a possible nuclear emergency, it is necessary to consider emergencies that could involve severe damage to nuclear fuel in the reactor core or to the spent fuel on the site. The emergency management system for response to a nuclear emergency needs to include clearly defined roles and responsibilities for the operating organization and for local and national authorities. The system, including the interaction between the operating organizations and authorities, needs to be regularly tested in exercises. Emergency workers needs to be designated, assigned clear specified duties regardless which organization they work for, be given adequate training and be properly protected during an emergency. Arrangements to allow decision to be made on the implementation of predetermined urgent protective actions for the public based on predefined plant conditions. Ensure that protective actions and other response actions in a nuclear emergency do more good than harm. A comprehensive approach to the decision making needs to be in place to ensure that this balance is achieved. Assist decision makers the public and others, that example medical staff, to gain an understanding of radiological health hazard in a nuclear emergency. Preparedness for termination of protective action and other response action and for transition to recovery phase. Timely analysis of an emergency and the response to it, drawing lessons and identifying possible improvements to enhance emergency arrangement. The implementation of international arrangements for notification and assistance needs to be strengthened. There is need to improve consultation and sharing of information among state on protective actions and other response actions. The best way to avert any disaster is awareness of the safety measures. There is no tomorrow when a disaster strikes. One is best prepared at that present moment. To avoid nuclear or radiological hazards, one should be vigilant. If any abandoned equipment or package shows any given signs as shown on the screen, then it is best to inform police or security personnel without creating panic amongst the public. Most importantly, one should maintain a safe distance from it. This one step may save many lives and impending disaster. In this lecture, we have seen various terminologies related to nuclear and radiological safety, threats associated with radiological and nuclear disaster, safety measures to be followed in general to prevent any such disaster, and major do's and don'ts after the disaster strikes. Thank you.